downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the high school football recruiting edition of the Buckeye Leafcast with your hosts. I am Andy Evans. And on the other side of the microphone, folks, he is going to give it to us. He is going to break down every Ohio State recruit as only he can, because he is, yes, folks, the Buckeye Leafcast's recruiting guru. I'm only talking about one man, and you know who it is, Mr. Chris Stefanick.
Andrew Evans, how is life treating you, my brother?
Oh, hey, getting ready for Christmas here. This is, I guess we can also say, a Christmas edition of the show, so Merry Christmas out there to everybody. But what about you? You ready for Santa to come squeeze his fat white ass down the chimney here in a couple hours?
I am. I've got everything ready. I was ready early this year, so it was low stress heading into the holidays. So
I did my typical, run over to grocery store, grab a few gift cards and stuff like that, kind of last minute kind of thing. But that's just how I roll sometimes, because I hate shopping.
I hear you.
I hate it.
Yep.
So, Chris, the first ever early signing day for college football happened on Wednesday the 20th. It was a 3-day period until Friday the 22nd. And Buckeyes signed, I believe, 22 kids. Is that correct?
I thought it was 21.
Okay, 21. See, this is why you're the recruiting guru, because you keep up on this stuff. And 21 kids. Pretty darn good class as of right now, if I'm not mistaken. This is the second-ranked class, only behind the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's talk a little bit of Ohio State recruiting. There were a couple of misses, however, as well as a couple of commits who decided Ohio State was not going to be their destination school of choice, and they decided to sign elsewhere. So let's break it down, though, first. Chris, what did you see out of this class? Were you happy with the kids who signed? And, we did talk off the air that this is probably going to become the new norm in college football, this early signing period, instead of having to wait until February. I mean, they've got almost their entire class already signed.
Yeah, 21 kids. It's like, they have an early signing period in basketball. They've had that for years.
Yes.
And they just this year, first year to get one for football. And it's like, it's not really early signing day, it's signing day. You know what I mean? It's like, It's like this is signing day. And then there's some other, I guess, late signing day maybe. That's just kind of a little icing on the cake. But 21 kids out of, they're going to sign 25 or 26. I think that's going to be the norm, because it's going to be basically like, if you're committed and you're not signing on early signing day, the question is then, well, why not? Is there something wrong, or you're not really committed? And it's a fair question.
Well, yeah, because in today's day and age, these kids are being recruited in friggin' peewee. You know what I mean? That's a little bit of sarcasm. But seriously, these kids, there are coaches out there that have offered kids when they're 12 and 13 years old to come play football for them. So recruiting starts so early that by the time these kids hit their senior year, they probably have already known for a good year or two where they want to go play. So at this point, you're absolutely right. If you don't sign early, what's the holdup?
Yeah, so if you got 21 out of 25 or 26, that's 84%. Other schools, like you said, Georgia is now number one. Ohio State's been number one the whole time, and then Georgia passed them up on the new signing day, the early signing day. Georgia's got 24 kids. I don't know how many more they're going to get. That's an awful lot of your class. I believe that's about 92% if they go for 25,
right? Or
no, 96% if they go to 25. So, there's not a lot of kids left. There's some interesting names still out there. The majority of the kids that are left are kind of major prospects, like 5-star kids.
Mm-hmm.
But because if you're like a 3-star prospect, at this point, the schools are like, hey, sign or we're moving on. Where the 5-star prospects, nobody's going to really say that to a 5-star prospect. They're going to be like, "Hey, we'll wait for you whenever you're ready," kind of thing.
Exactly.
I don't know if you remember Terrell Pryor.
Oh yeah.
Pryor, he waited like a month or something after signing day. The signing day that in February, back before we even had early signing day.
Oh yeah.
It was like one of the number one kids in the country. And, people were just willing to wait forever for him. So yeah, that's pretty much all that's left is the kids that are really 5-star that people are willing to wait forever for them. But even then, most of them signed too. There's not that many left. So it's definitely an interesting thing. But you said we had some defections. In the Jim Tressel days, it seemed like he would lock up almost everyone in his class. There'd be a couple kids that would wait till like National Signing Day. And we mentioned Terrell Pryor. Terrell Pryor was kind of the exception that he actually picked Ohio State. It seemed like those kids that do the hat dance. They have a press conference and they put like 3 or 4 hats out in front of them, and they make a move towards one hat and then they're just really faking you out as they go to the other one. Or those kind of kids almost never chose Ohio State back in the Jim Tressel days. It was like signing day was always a disappointment. You'd go in and we're like, there's 4 or 5 guys that are deciding today, that between Ohio State and somebody else. And if you were lucky, you'd get one of them. And I mean, I remember quite a few signing days where like Jim Tressel got like 0 for 4 or whatever on signing day, just didn't get anyone. But with Urban Meyer, signing day has been a pretty big deal typically. Like signing day, he's going like 3 for 4 kind of thing, and like getting somebody he didn't even expect him to get. He ends up getting a kid to flip from Nebraska or something like that to come to Ohio State, and you just don't even – it's something didn't even see coming. Well, that isn't what happened this year. This was like,
no, it didn't.
This was definitely the worst signing day, even though the class is like one of the best, probably like in the top 2 classes as far as recruiting ranking goes. What you actually saw the action happen on signing day was probably the worst of the year. Not probably, it was the worst. So you had 2 kids flip that were committed. You had Emory Jones is the number 41 kid in the country. He was been committed to Ohio State for forever. Flips to Florida on signing day. Jaiden Woodbey, number 28 player overall, had been committed to Ohio State for a long time. He flips to Florida State on signing day. So you lost those 2. And the one that hurt the most, Jackson Carman, number 1 kid in Ohio, number 1 offensive tackle in the country, number 9 player overall, would have been the highest ranked player in the class had he committed to Ohio State, which is what basically almost everybody thought. He commits to Clemson. So you have these kids, number 9, you had Jackson Carman, what was that, number 28 would be, you've got...
Woodbey was, rated by 247 Composite as the number 2 safety in the country.
Right, and then Emory Jones, number 41 overall player, and then who did you add on signing day? We ended up flipping a Nebraska commit.
Yeah.
Cameron Brown, wide receiver. Yeah. But Cameron Brown was like the 340-something player in the class. So you're like losing number 9, number 28, number 43, and you're adding the 340-something. So that's what signing day was like for Urban Meyer this year. And it hurt. You losing those kids. I mean, you saw that's why they lost. They had a commanding lead on number 1 in the country and lost it. Now they're number 2. They had a commanding lead as far as like average rank before, and now they still have the highest ranked class as far as average rank per player. The quality over quantity kind of thing.
Sure.
But it's very narrow between them and Georgia, the number 1 class, who, while Ohio State was dropping 5-star kids like flies, Georgia was adding 5-star kids. So that's what you see that leap happen. So, yeah, not overall kind of a disappointing signing day on one hand, but on the other hand, you're looking at the number 2 class in the country, really highly ranked class, probably the second best class, at least from recruiting rankings go, with last year's being the number 1 recruiting class Urban Meyer ever had. This is probably second just only to that class. So it's hard to be too, even with losing all those kids, it's still like the second best class Urban Meyer's ever had, at least on paper. On the field, it's hard to argue with that 2013 class that had, 1 Joey Bosa, 1 JT Barrett, Darren Lees, and the like, the Raekwon McMillans, and just NFL player after NFL player, star player, the backbone of that 2014 national championship team. That so far, I mean, maybe the class of 2017 and 2018 will prove to be the best class of Urban Meyer that he's ever had. But as far as actual production on the field, You can't top 2013 at this point. But, like I said, as far as recruiting rankings goes, hard to be disappointed with the number 2 class in the Urban Meyer era.
I was just going to say, isn't it crazy that some people out there, some Buckeye fans out there are quote-unquote disappointed with the number 2 ranked class in the country? I mean, this is a damn good class, Chris.
Right.
But when you lose out to the top offensive tackle in the country, the top player in the state, that's a kid that you have to get. Now, however, there's a little bit of a backstory here, a little bit of some jabs, supposedly, that were taken at Urban by Dabo Swinney. Supposedly, Jackson Carman did not sign because he even said himself, yes, Dabo talked me into coming down to Clemson because he really sold me on the pitch that Urban's on the back end of his time here at Ohio State, which may or may not be true. I mean, next season, 2018, is going to be the 7th year, the last year of the contract that Urban signed when he came here in 2012. Now, is he going to re-sign Urban for another few years? Let's hope to God, yes, that he does. However, if he doesn't, that might be a valid reason why Jackson Carman didn't want to come here, because he's afraid if he comes and then he's here for 1 year and then they get a new coach, Dabo, I'm sure, is going to be at Clemson for quite a while.
Are you sure of that? Are you sure of that? Because, what if he gets a job in the NFL? What if the Alabama job comes open? Nick Saban's no spring chicken.
I would say,
you know what I mean? I don't know how you can see. This is the thing. Like, what you're saying is it possible Urban Meyer could retire in a couple years or go on to the NFL because he doesn't really have anything left to prove at the collegiate level? Yes, it's possible. Is there any reason to believe?
Anything's possible.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, is there any evidence to make you think that? No, there's zero evidence. Zero evidence.
Right.
So it's just Dabo Swinney's just telling the kid whatever it will take to get him to sign.
Well, absolutely. And hell, I'm sure Urban Meyer's probably told some kids out there whatever it would take to get him to sign. Let's hope that's not the case. But this is college football recruiting, major college football recruiting. And, of course, these coaches, to your point, they probably will say just about anything to get him to stay. I'm sure Dabo was just saying that. Does he have proof of that? I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he and Urban are best buddies and they text and tweet and, do all that kind of stuff with each other all the time. But he got this kid to go down to Clemson. He got Jackson Carman. He came right into Ohio State's backyard and stole the best player in the state, the best offensive lineman in the country, and one of the top 10 prospects overall in the nation. However, I kind of had a little bit of an inside track, buddy of mine, and this is kind of a, he said kind of thing, so I'm kind of getting it through the grapevine, but I have a buddy who played football with a coach who is currently at Fairfield High School, which is where Jackson Carman attended. And according to my buddy, through the coach, Jackson Carman was quote-unquote lazy and soft. That's what this coach told my buddy, and my buddy told me. Take that with a grain of salt, because once again, it's hearsay. I didn't hear that from the coach directly, but I can trust what my buddy had to say. And if that's the case, I don't want, a kid here who's lazy and soft, as well as one of the other things that Jackson Carman said about wanting to come to Ohio State was he didn't want to feel the pressure of being the top-ranked recruit in the state and coming in and playing at Ohio State under such immense pressure. Well, Chris, if you're the top-ranked offensive lineman in America, you're probably going to feel that pressure anywhere you go. It just sounds to me this might have been a good thing that Ohio State did not get Jackson Carman. And I'm not trying to make this out to be a case of sour grapes. Like, well, fine, screw you. You don't want to come play for Ohio State. I didn't want you anyways. But because of some of the things that he said personally, as well as some of the hearsay that I heard, when a football coach is saying, yeah, this kid's lazy and soft, I don't get how that kind of kid can be the top offensive lineman in the country to begin with if he's lazy and soft. But if that's the case, maybe this was a good thing we didn't get Jackson Carman. I don't know. What do you think?
Who knows? Almost every time a kid decommits, stuff like this starts coming out. Oh, we didn't really want him anyway. And, it's very sour grape sounding, and I kind of take it with a grain of salt, that anything negative said about a kid after he decommits. But he, in addition to being lazy and soft, it's very clear. I mean, that may or may not be true, but it's very clear that the guy is like a prima donna, attention-seeking kind of guy. I'm reminded of like when Josh Meyer committed. Josh Meyer committed really early to Urban Meyer, and he told Urban Meyer, he's like, "Don't waste your time recruiting me. I'm solid, coach. Use the time that you would otherwise use to like babysit me." Because that's what Urban Meyer uses the commitment. You have to babysit commitments to make sure that they don't let other coaches get in their ear and steal them away from you. You have to keep making them feel good the whole way up until you get that signature on the dotted line. Josh Meyer was like, "You don't need to sit here and babysit me. Spend that time getting other kids to put in the class beside me because I want the best class we can have." That's the kind of kid I want. Like no press conference, he's like telling the coach, like, "Look, I'm solid." That's what I want from an offensive lineman, especially. I don't want this offensive lineman to be like a prima donna quarterback, like wanting everybody, "Hey, look at me." And you definitely get that feel from Jackson Carman. Now, does that mean I didn't want him? No, I wanted him very badly, and I was very upset when he signed somewhere else. So, take it for what it's worth. But yeah, now having said that, one person, and I said this the whole time, long before he even flipped, I was hoping Emory Jones would flip. And I'll give him my reasons.
Really?
There's two reasons for it. Yeah,
okay.
I think this was addition by subtraction.
Okay.
2 reasons.
All right.
So reason number 1, when Urban Meyer has himself a running quarterback, he runs that quarterback. We've talked about this all season long.
Yeah.
With JT Barrett and how the offense just doesn't look as good with JT Barrett in there, and then you get Cardale Jones comes in and all of a sudden it's a juggernaut and it's 59-63 versus Wisconsin and so on, whatever. You see Michigan, Ohio State losing to Michigan, Dwayne Haskins comes in and like literally every drive is going down and scoring. The offense can't be stopped when you go with a pocket passer. So I don't know that I don't actually think it's an indictment on JT Barrett. It's an indictment on how Urban Meyer runs the offense when he has a running quarterback in there. If he called the same offense, if he called the same plays with JT Barrett running it as he did with Dwayne Haskins, I think we would have saw similarly improved results. But he doesn't. When he has a running quarterback, he doesn't. Now, when Emory Jones started to waver, for whatever reason, the quarterback Urban Meyer went out to land was the pocket passer and one Matthew Baldwin out of Austin, Texas. He's only a 3-star kid, but the reason he's a 3-star is because he didn't start until his senior year. Because he was a late bloomer, it was because he had – I'm trying to think what the guy was. The guy was like the rookie – the quarterback playing ahead of him. This year was the freshman of the year in the Big 12, I want to say. So he had a phenomenal quarterback playing a Division I quarterback starting ahead of him. So he didn't get a chance to start till his senior year. So now this is at the same school that Baker Mayfield went to. And Baker Mayfield did start as a junior, but he was actually in line to not start until his senior year. But the quarterback got injured ahead of him. So that tells you, Baker Mayfield's, about as good of a college quarterback as you're going to see. And at the same high school, he was in the same situation. So I'm not saying that this Matthew Baldwin is the next Baker Mayfield, but I'm just saying that's the reason why he's ranked so low. Looking at his film, he's completed over 70% of his passes, tremendous pocket passer, tremendous accuracy, very few interceptions to touchdowns, that whole sort of thing. And, he's more of the Cardale Jones, Dwayne Haskins mold than he is of the JT Barrett, Braxton Miller mold, which, that's when I look at Emory Jones, I think like Braxton Miller, Terrell Pryor, probably more like Terrell Pryor is probably the best comparison I could think of. So you're getting a quarterback that's that pocket passer that I want. That's the number 1 reason. And, I also got a little excited because the 2019 quarterback they just offered, a kid out of Iowa, his name is escaping me at the moment, but he's also a pocket passer. So I'm like, has Urban finally seen the light? Has Kevin Wilson said, hey, you know what? Our offense is a lot better when we have a pocket passer. Just look at what I did, with Sam Bradford, and look at what I did at Indiana. It was by having a pocket passing quarterback. I'm hoping that's the case. So that's why I wanted Matthew Baldwin. Let's just take the running quarterback away from Urban Meyer because he can't resist the quarterback run when he's got it. Reason number 2. All right, Matthew Baldwin, 70% completions through 3,000, 4,000 yards, some ridiculously high number of passing yards, very few interceptions. Emory Jones, plenty of games, he was only getting 100 yards passing, was not tremendously accurate. And I don't know if you saw this, but he was at the Elite 11, one of the regional Elite 11s. And for those of you who don't know, the Elite 11, they run a series of camps for the elite prospects around the country. And then from each one, they select, I think at each position, they select 11 players to go their national Elite 11 camp in Oregon that they have every year. And this is like, an All-American kind of bonanza. They have it's a really big deal to get an invite to that. So he went to the regional, didn't get invited to the big one, which means they selected 11 other quarterbacks to go ahead of him. And then we come to find out, you look at film, and he could hit the broadside of a barn. It was like literally it was like Joe Bauserman kind of thing. You remember Joe Bauserman would not only, he's like throwing them in the literally throwing balls in the stands. He's overthrowing guys so badly. And I mean, I'm not just like literally. It's like if you say you couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, it usually means you overthrew him by like 2 yards or something. Literally, like wide receiver would be inside of the barn. Joe Bauserman would go to throw it to him. He wouldn't hit the barn. You know what I mean? That was how bad Bauserman was. Emory Jones was looking that bad. And this was in like 7-on-7 drills, Andy, where he's wearing like shorts and a t-shirt and there's no pressure in his face. And he's like just completely overthrowing guys, completely, just not even in the vicinity of them. So, I don't know that this guy was a quarterback. I think this is a guy who his best position is probably like running back, wide receiver, safety or something like that. Because he can't throw the ball, and I just don't want a quarterback who can't throw the ball. So, to me, this is addition by subtraction.
Well, when you start talking about Joe Bauserman, that's probably not a comparison that you want to draw for a quarterback. So,
oh my God, right?
God love Joe Bauserman. Buckeye gave his best, but certainly a quarterback that will go down in infamy here with Buckeye fans at Ohio State. So, Emory Jones, I don't blame the kid either for wanting to go to Florida. I mean, let's face it, he's going to have an opportunity to play right away because the quarterback situation at Florida is just an absolute disaster. When it comes to Ohio State, he's going to be at least sitting behind 3 guys. I mean, Haskins, Burrow, and Martell.
Right.
And he may not have an opportunity to play for 2 years, 3 years, who knows, depending on if Haskins and Martell stick around and how long they stick around. I don't include Joe Burrow in that because I think after next year, Joe Burrow's gone. So, but yeah, hearing that comparison certainly doesn't disappoint me. I know the kid was highly rated, but I don't know why they may have offered him in the first place. Was it just because of his athletic skills? It probably was. And with Urban, because of the type of offense he likes to run, like you said, loves to run the quarterback, then he probably wanted Emory Jones to come because of his running skills, not so much because of his passing skills. And I'm sorry, if you're going to play quarterback, I get it that having an athletic, mobile quarterback nowadays, and really not even necessarily nowadays, it's always been a positive thing. But, when you run the read option offense, you want to have a nice athletic mobile quarterback, but he's still got to have the ability to throw the football. And, of course, that's been the one gripe on JT is his inability to throw. Now, how much you want to bet next year when Dwayne Haskins is flinging it down the field, if he doesn't have the ability to run the ball, people are going to be getting on his case because he can't run the ball like JT was able to. Bring back JT! Dwayne Haskins can't run! Damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I know because Carman committed to Clemson, Woodbey and Jones flipped. That kind of took Ohio State down a notch, but still 21 kids signed letters of intent. It's still the number 2 class in the country right now, Chris. And 4 guys that they picked up are still the top-rated guys at their position in the entire country. One of them, Taron Vincent, defensive tackle, number 1 defensive tackle in the country out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. You got Jalen Gill, local boy here from Westerville South High School, the number 1 all-purpose back in the country. You've got Matthew Jones, the number 1 center out of Erasmus Hall in Brooklyn, New York. And then Jeremy Ruckert, the number 1 tight end in the country out of Lindenhurst, New York. So, and obviously a slew of other kids who were highly rated as well. Taraja Mitchell, linebacker from Bishop Sullivan Catholic High School in Virginia Beach. Tyreek Johnson. Good thing they got him because of Woodbey leaving, but Tyreek Johnson, the 5th rated safety in the country out of Trinity Christian Academy in Jacksonville, Florida. And Cameron Babb. Not Cameron Brown, who both guys are wide receivers for Christian Brothers College out of St. Louis, Missouri. We got Cameron Babb committed back a little bit ago, and then he was able to get his boy Cameron Brown to flip. So those are the only 2 wide receivers the Buckeyes pulled in, and ironically, both named Cameron from the same high school. Josh Proctor, safety out of Owasso, Oklahoma. He was the 8th-ranked safety in the country. Brian Sneed, running back out of Armwood High School in Seffner, Florida, the number 4-ranked running back in the country. You got Max Ray, offensive tackle out of Franklin, Tennessee. He's like the 9th overall offensive tackle in the country. Another local boy, LaChristian Blue Smith, out of Huber Heights Wayne High School in Dayton.
Do you think Urban Meyer is going to allow Blue Smith to go by the name Blue? this is a guy he won't let, like, if a reporter is at the practice or an NFL scout or whatever, if they're wearing blue, they have to take it off. They have to put a red shirt on, So he's going to allow one of his players to have the nickname Blue. This would be interesting.
Yeah, is he going to let him be called Blue? I don't know. We're going to find out. He's probably still going to carry the nickname Blue, but he probably just will not be calling him Blue. I'm sure he'll probably be calling him LaChristian, but
it'll be like Scarlett Smith.
Yeah.
Gray Smith. Scarlett sounds like a woman, so maybe we'll go with Gray Smith.
Yeah. Gray Smith sounds better than Scarlett. Yeah, start talking about Scarlett Johansson or Scarlett O'Hara or Scarlett Letter. But still, Chris, a lot of good, a lot of solid talent in this class. So before we jump off the mics here, give me your summation of some of the guys in this class. And is there anybody in this class you feel might be able to step in and help the Buckeyes right away? Because there's still a ton of talent on this team ahead of these kids.
Oh, geez, yeah. So I would say what jumps out to me when I look at this is defensive tackles and running backs. So you already mentioned Teron Vincent, highest-ranked kid in the class, number 13 overall, out of a Football Factory IMG Academy, and son of Troy Vincent. Maybe if you follow the NFL, you're probably familiar with him, a Pro Bowler. So he's got some good genes going for him. And just a monster tackle. But not only him, they got the number 1 defensive tackle coming out of JUCO, and that's Antoine Jackson. This is a guy who, everybody wanted, Ohio State wanted, back when he was coming out of, and I'm trying to think it was at Auburn, Alabama, something. I think he went to maybe Auburn. And, I don't know what the story was, if he didn't have the grades or what happened there, but he ended up transferring to Blinn Community College, which is a powerhouse community college, and just tore it up there. So he's not only the number 1 defensive tackle out of JUCO this year, he's the number 1 player in the nation out of JUCO college this year. And he's a guy that I think, with Mike Hill being gone, with Tracy Sprinkle being gone.
A lot of guys being gone.
Yeah, I think he's going to step in and be a starter, and potentially even, I hope not, but Draymond Jones, my understanding is he's probably a 1st or 2nd round draft pick, so good chance he's going to go too. So, if he's not a starter, he's going to be in the rotation. At a minimum, Antoine Jackson will be in the rotation, and I kind of think he's going to start because he's just he's a player. He's a player. So Teron Vincent he's going to have a shot. So we'll see. And then they also, in addition to that, had Tony Togai, who is a player out of Idaho, which is I think Urban Meyer's first player out of Idaho at Ohio State. Now, he did get some when he was at Utah, but his first out of Idaho while at Ohio State. Idaho not necessarily known for its football, but number 9 defensive tackle in the country, number 127 overall, really solid, high 4-star kid. So between those 3, that jumps out at me. And then I said the running backs. You had mentioned Jalen Gill, number 2 player in Ohio after Cam Jackson. Or Jackson Carman. Sorry, I've been getting my
You know what? Who cares what his
around.
damn name is? Screw
Yeah,
it.
there's so many damn Camerons in this class. Jackson Carman.
Jacksons and Camerons and Carmans.
Yeah, my understanding, he is a playmaker in the mold of like a Curtis Samuel type. We'll probably get his first look at the hybrid position at the H-back.
Yep.
And, if not there, maybe he goes to running back. But, yeah, that's like a Curtis Samuel type. Then you've got after him Brian Sneed from Florida. What I'm hearing is he, super talented kid, very reminiscent of one J.K. Dobbins, gives you that kind of style. So another nice player to come in there and keep the stable full. And then Master Teague out of Tennessee, interesting name there. If you get named Master Teague, you better
some
bring
lofty expectations.
Yeah, you better bring it, or you got some shoes to fill on the playground growing up. So you better be a tough kid. But number 220 kid overall, number 11 running back in the country. He's the power back. He's like, I'm hearing like Carlos Hyde comparison. So if we just added Carlos Hyde, J.K. Dobbins, and Curtis Samuel, I'm pretty happy with that running back haul. That is not bad. So that's what really jumped out to me. And then when you said, who could step in and play right away besides Antoine Jackson, I'm really liking this kid. Might be the best kid in the class. Number 1 tight end in the country, number 30 overall, Jeremy Ruckert.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
He looks like he's a guy who looks like he could be the greatest tight end Ohio State's ever had. Just one of those, just amazing talent as a receiving tight end, but with the size and he's 238, 6'5" and a half, as a high school player. And size and the willingness to be a blocker, so it's not like he's just going to be a finesse tight end out there as well. I mean, you look at like what kind of mismatches Gronkowski makes in the NFL.
Yep.
I'm not saying he's the next Gronkowski because that guy's just like, he's a 1 in a billion kind of player, but maybe the greatest ever. But he's the kind of guy who could maybe have that kind of an impact in college.
Absolutely.
It's one thing to do it at the NFL level, and I'm not putting that kind of expectations on Rucker. That would be unrealistic. But he might be able to be that kind of player in college based on the way what we're seeing out of him in high school, which is just a freak. So, and then you look at, Marcus Ball graduating, AJ Alexander, who until he got injured was number 2 behind Marcus Ball.
He's done.
Unfortunately, doctor said your career is over. Medical things, career is over. And Kerry Hawkins, who
transferred,
just couldn't, despite AJ Alexander being injured, couldn't get on the depth chart. They had to move Rashad Berry from defensive end to tight end because of the injuries to Alexander and Kerry Hawkins, and as well as like Luke Farrell and Jake Hausman just not being at the level that Urban Meyer expects from a starting player, from a guy that's in the rotation at Ohio State. So it's pretty thin right now. You're looking at Rashad Berry looks really good. He looks like a freak. He's just athletically is just insane. But after that, it's like, Jake Hausman and Luke Farrell, highly rated kids, but haven't shown much. They need to make a big leap if they're going to be a tight end that we can look to and say, hey, that's a strength of the team right there. Right now, they're just warm bodies. So I could see Jeremy Rucker come in and easily leaping those two. And maybe giving even Rashad Berry a run for his money. And, at Ohio State, they play 2 tight ends a lot anyways. Whether they're going with a true 2 tight end set, which you'll see that, or just rotating guys. Urban likes to rotate guys on offense and, give guys breathers. So 2 tight ends are going to play. And I would not be shocked if Rucker makes that top 2.
That is probably the one position right now, I agree with you, that if any of these kids are going to come in and play right away, I think Luke Ruckert, without a doubt, or Jeremy Ruckert, has the best shot at starting right away because, Keir Hawkins gone. You just touched on, obviously, Marcus Ball. He's gone. Rashad Berry, he did not look too bad. And, Luke Farrell got in some games early on in the season, and then, you didn't see him in the later stages of the year. So does a guy like Jake Hausman come on? Does a guy like Rashad Berry, really step up and prove that he is the tight end of the future? Because with Keir Hawkins transferring, AJ Alexander now done, and Marcus Ball leaving, the position definitely is a little thin. So I like Rucker. Yeah, the tape on him, man, God, he is. He's just 6'5". 238, so he's tall, but he's lean. And they're saying that this kid could be the next big star tight end. And not only at the college level, but if he can keep his nose clean and really develop, he could be the next big deal even at the next level in the NFL. So I'm with you on that one. Jeremy Ruckert definitely I could see coming in and really pushing for a starting spot. So, who else do you got here as far as some signees that stand out to you?
All right, well, I'm going to go with the sleeper. So this one doesn't necessarily stand out to me when I look at these, but it's a fun sleeper pick as far as this is the guy who is the lowest ranked kid in the class.
I know where you're going with this.
619th in the country. One, Marcus Hooker. younger brother of one, Malik Hooker, who is quite possibly the best safety I ever saw don the scarlet and gray, and he's tearing it up in the NFL right now.
Pretty good.
Malik Hooker was also extremely low rated, was more of a basketball player in high school.
Yes, he was.
He came to Ohio State really raw. So much so that even his second year, redshirted his first year, his second year, played like a little bit on special teams, but like wasn't even in the too deep at the safety position, and then kind of exploded on the scene his third year, started to put it all together. And he's still, like, even as a rookie in the NFL, is just still learning. The upside on him is crazy because he's still learning. He just hadn't been playing that long. It was very raw. One of the lowest ranked kids when he came into his class, one where people were questioning, why are we going after this kid? Ended up being one of the highest, drafted guys that Urban Meyer had, and one of the highest, as far as on the field production. I mean, Malik Hooker probably should have been the defensive MVP for the Big Ten that year. The only reason that, what was his name from that school up north got it?
Jabril Peppers.
Jabril Peppers got it. If you look statistically, Malik Hooker was better than Jabril Peppers in every category. The only Jabril Peppers did that Malik Hooker didn't do was special team stuff.
Yeah, return punts.
But we're talking about defensive MVP. We're not talking about like Heisman voting, right? So defensive MVP, Malik Hooker was better statistically and better just looking on the field, looked better. But he had the hype train rolling, and so that he got it based off of all the hype.
Sure.
But Malik Hooker, amazing. Well, Marcus Hooker, younger brother, freak athlete like his older brother, but very raw. I think you get him into those coaches, and they know how to take a player that's raw but has ability and develop him. I mean, look at Darren Lee. Darren Lee was another kid. People were like, why did we go after this kid? This is not an Ohio State level player. And based on how he was in high school, the level, how raw he was, they were probably right. But the coaches are, one, awesome at evaluating talent, and two, developing that talent. And I mean, that's a skill that is underrated. You look at like the Brady Hoke era. Brady Hoke recruited like a monster. He just couldn't. The kids never got better. He would get like these top kids that would be like rated higher. Some of them would be rated higher than players Ohio State would get, and they'd never get on the field. They'd never be like half as good as these kids that were ranked lower than Ohio State, but the coaches knew how to develop them and turn them into players. So once these coaches get their hands on Marcus Hooker, I'm excited to see what the number 619th kid in the country can do. Give him a couple years. It's not one you're going to see early returns on. This kid has red shirt written all over him, but I really want to see what he can do. I mean, who do you look at as your sleeper?
As far as a sleeper, I know it's kind of hard when you look at this class to say, oh, this kid's a sleeper, that kid's a sleeper, because they're all pretty highly recruited and highly touted, I want to see what happens with Alex Williams, defensive end out of Pickerington North. Local kid, late commit. In fact, I think he was offered, 1 or 2 days before the early signing day and decided, that's where I want to go. 6'7", 250-pound defensive end, like I said, out of Pickerington North High School here in Central Ohio. Didn't have a whole lot of offers, Chris. I mean, West Virginia, and Iowa State were some of the other big names that had offered him. In fact, I believe they were the only other 3 schools that offered him. So I'm kind of interested in what Urban saw out of Alex Williams. Now, I'm glad that he took a local kid because, as you and I have talked about on a number of occasions, Urban's going outside of the state of Ohio. For some reason, he does not feel that the state of Ohio is going to make Ohio State a successful program. I wholeheartedly disagree with that rhetoric. I believe that there is a bevy of talent in the state that you can create national championship winning teams with. I'm not sitting here saying you need to take every single kid in your recruiting class has to come from the state, but to only pull in 2, 3, 4 kids a year, I think is a little crazy. So I was happy to see that he offered this kid, but I am a little perplexed. Once again, I mean, West Virginia, Iowa State, Virginia, okay, Iowa State had a decent year this year, as did West Virginia. They're not going to compete for national titles on a yearly basis. In fact, I think West Virginia, the last time they were really in the hunt was like 10 years ago. And before that, who the hell knows? Virginia, they had some good teams back in the early and mid 90s maybe, but since then Virginia's not really been a program that people think, oh yeah, Virginia, yeah. So granted, they are Power 5 schools, but a little interested to see why Alex Williams was offered so late. Obviously, there's got to be something there because, as you've said, Chris, Urban Meyer's not going to offer a kid unless he really feels that this kid has the potential to play on Sunday. That is the kid he's going after.
Right.
Now, maybe sometimes he's got to make a concession on something. He needs a position to fill, and Alex Williams, I believe Alex Williams is the only defensive end in this class, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe he offered this kid just because he needed a defensive end to fill and figured it's a local kid, and if I offer him, he's going to, commit right away. And it's, but I don't know. We'll see. But I'm interested to see what Alex Williams is made of.
Well, you bring up a really great story, and I'm glad you brought it up that we didn't let this go by, and that's the defensive end situation at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. So, you've got a number of guys graduating early, Jalen Holmes, you've got Taquan Lewis, both seniors. You've got Sam Hubbard, who, while not a senior, has been in the program for 4 years and participated in senior tackle. So for anybody who may not be aware of this, Ohio State has this tradition where, like, towards the end of the season, I think maybe Michigan week, they have a ceremonial tackling of a tackling dummy where all the seniors come out and tackle a tackling dummy. And Sam Hubbard, not a senior, participates in this ritual week for seniors. So he's gone. He is gone. He was considering going last year. So he is definitely gone. And who does that leave you with? Well, it leaves you with Nick Bosa, who will be in his third year in 2018 and will be certainly gone after unless he has like a serious injury, he's gone after 2018.
Oh yeah, he's done after next year. Yep.
Chase Young.
Yep.
And the only other person is Jonathan Cooper, who's also going to be in his third year. And I guess if he has a monster year,
he could be gone too.
Actually, he could go. It wouldn't be the first time that somebody had a monster year their third year and leaves early for the NFL. Hello, Malik Hooker. Somebody who didn't do much for the team before that. So
hello, Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. And on the whole roster, 3 kids, and 2 of them. If you look out a year from now, you're talking 1 kid. So the depth at defensive end is razor thin. God forbid. Now as far as like talent, it's 3 amazing. That's like 3 5-star kids, but if they lose, or if not 5-star, really high 4-star, top 100 kind of kids, right? But if they lose just one of them to injury, they're in serious trouble. And looking at this year, they had Brenton Cox, who was like a top 50 kid in the country that they lost. I think he ended up going to Georgia. Another one of those reasons why Georgia passed up when you lose a 5-star kid and then he goes to another team. So they're adding a 5-star kid while you're losing one. That it's almost like the 14-point swing in football when you throw an interception, an end zone, and it gets returned 100 yards. That was like a 14-point swing in recruiting terms, when a 5-star decommitted from Ohio State and went to Georgia. But they lost Brenton Cox. Now, early on, it looked like this was going to be an amazing defensive haul for Ohio State because they had Brenton Cox, a 5-star kid. They were in on Micah Parsons, who's like the number 1 defensive end in the country, and were leading. Like some people had them leading for him. I don't see where he ended up going. Did he end up going to Penn State? He ended up going somewhere else.
Micah Parsons?
Yeah.
Yeah, Penn State.
So he ended up going to Penn State, but was a lead for Ohio State for a while. They were in on Tariq, high 4-star kids, Tariq Smith and Jason Oweh, and for a while there it was like they were saying neither of those kids were coming to Ohio State. Both Oweh and Smith are uncommitted currently, and Urban Meyer is doing everything he can to say, look at the depth chart. You come here, you're going to play year 1. You're going to be in the rotation year 1. And he's selling that, and now we're starting to see some people feel good about Tariq Smith coming back and or Jason Oweh. So it might end up being 1 or 2 of those kids. Yeah, still have room, still have 4 or 5 scholarships available. So there's hope that Ohio State can close this class out with at least 2 and hopefully 3 or 4 defensive ends, given how thin it is. But that's what the story. You looked at it, and Urban was like, you know what? I might strike out on Smith and Oweh. If I do that, I've got to have somebody. I've got to at least have bodies this is insane. And so that's what he went out and got. He's like, who can I get? You can get in your car from, the Woodbey in Columbus and drive to go see, Williams. So he felt pretty good that he could land him, and he got him. Looking at the film, I watched his highlight reel, and I was like, this is probably the least exciting highlight reel I've seen for an Ohio State player in maybe ever. I guess sometimes you look at the offensive lineman highlight reels, and they're not all that exciting. But this, for a defensive end, I was like, this doesn't look like an Ohio State player to me. It really doesn't. So I'm hoping Urban Meyer can prove me wrong. He does have a great frame. The kid's 6'7", 250 as a high school kid. That's an amazing frame. But for a guy with that kind of size, I would expect him to be destroying high school competition. And I just really didn't see it when I looked at the highlight reel. So hopefully Urban Meyer knows something I don't, and this isn't like a Stephen Collier situation. For those of you who may not be aware, Urban put all his eggs in the who was the guy, the Clemson quarterback that just won the national title for him?
Deshaun Watson?
Deshaun Watson. Urban wanted Deshaun Watson, and he thought he was going to get him. And he put all his eggs in the Deshaun Watson basket. Didn't recruit another quarterback. So when Deshaun Watson surprised him and committed to Clemson, he didn't have a plan B. And he's like, oh my God, I've got to have a quarterback in this class. Who can I get? All he was able to get was Stephen Collier, who at the time, I think even Urban Meyer knew. Certainly, like, if you went to message boards, Ohio State fans of recruiting knew Stephen Collier was not an Ohio State level player. This is a kid who had offers like similar to Alex Williams, or maybe even worse. Was basically a waste of a scholarship, right? They could have just got a walk on to give them what Stephen Collier gave them. But they felt like they had to have a quarterback, and they had to take whatever they could get. Well, Urban did have, a plan B and plan C, with these different defensive ends, but just struck out on all of them. And looking at the depth chart, he's like, oh shit, I got to get somebody. I cannot afford to not have a defensive end in this class. Oh my God, I'm going to be moving linebackers to defensive end, moving defensive tackles to defensive end. Really, I'm counting on him to be my starting tight end, but I'm going to have to go with Jake Hausman or something and move Rashad Berry back to defensive end because it was just that paper thin. So.
And that might be the case, too. If Ruckert comes in here, Luke Farrell turns it on, maybe they get something out of Jake Hausman, you could see Berry go back to defensive end because of the lack of depth that they might have for next year.
Yeah, like I said, God forbid they get an injury. At this point, let's say they don't get Smith or Owe. So that means you're talking 4 defensive ends on scholarship. One of them would be a freshman, very highly rated, looks like, maybe a reach. What if there's an injury? What if, the numbers are so thin it almost doesn't matter who it is? Cooper's probably the least of those. Even if it's Cooper, we're in dire straits. So, yeah. I could see Rashad Berry getting moved. I could see a guy like a Cornell moving back out to defensive end. I could see maybe Dante Booker moving up to defensive end. He's a big kid, or maybe Malik Harrison, some of these linebackers that are bigger. They might have to do that if they don't get some more defensive ends, which would be a shame. You'd have guys playing out of position just because you allow the cupboard from there. Hopefully, Urban is now armed with that depth chart to go in and win over the Jason Owe and Tariq Smith, or maybe some other defensive ends he's looking at that we're not talking about, and turn this thing around. But I really think that's what happened with Alex Williams is it's kind of a Stephen Collier situation, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, Tyreek Smith would be a huge get out of Cleveland Heights, 6'3", 260-pounder that 247 Sports has got rated as the 4th best weak side defensive end in the country. Yeah, Micah Parsons, I guess there was a little bit of a to-do, if you will, about him coming here and something about getting suspended, and there was...
What happened is, when Micah Parsons visited, it was game day was in town. It was during the Oklahoma game. And Micah Parsons got his picture taken in with Herb Street. And that was a recruiting violation. You're not allowed to do that. So
is that not? Come on.
Dude,
he gets a friggin' picture taken with somebody that's considered a violation just because this guy used to play at Ohio State, but he's now with ESPN. He gets his picture taken with him, and that's considered a violation.
It's kind of ridiculous. It's not like they were giving him hookers and blow. He got a picture taken. This isn't a $100 handshake.
Gee, many Christmas.
But it is. It's a violation. And I heard that that's not actually the reason why. It's maybe one one small piece of evidence that built up the case against Micah Parsons, but the coaches, and I don't know if we know what it is, but they're, maybe personality, but something. The coaches just moved on. They said, we don't want this kid on our team for whatever reason, and it's a shame because defensive end in the country, but at the same time, maybe they're smarter than me when it comes to this kind of thing. If they see red flags, better to move on now than, a year from now, 2 years from now, we're dealing with another tattoo gate or something.
Well, I don't know, Chris. Come on, don't sell yourself short. I bet you could go onto the staff and show them a thing or two about recruiting.
Well, let me just put it this way. I'm not as knowledgeable of the situation as they are. So
yeah, well, that I might agree with you on. Yeah, I'm sure they've got a little bit of an inside track as to what exactly went down. But well, good stuff, sir. Anything else you can think of recruiting wise before we head on out of here?
I think I could talk about it all day, but we could probably just head on out.
Well, there you have it, folks. This edition of the show brought to you by Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's not clean until it's Christy Clean. Go visit her Facebook page at Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's also brought to you by Columbus Wired for your fill of Central Ohio sports and beyond. Be sure to check us out at columbuswired.net. And it's also brought to you by Choice Conversations. And Chris, enlighten the folks out there where they can get a little more Chris Stefanick in their life.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Andy. So I have a personal development podcast called Choice Conversations. It's at choiceconversations.com. So if you're looking to make some New Year's resolutions, how can I improve my life? Let me help you out with that. Come on over to choiceconversations.com and check out some of the episodes, and you'll definitely get a variety of pointers for things that you can do, things that you could choose as your New Year's resolution to help you improve your life. And be that you're, advancing your career, improving your relationships, getting, working off some of that a little extra around the middle you put on over the holidays.
Yeah.
I'm there to help you out.
I could definitely use some of that kind of Chris Stefanick in my life after the first of the year, because I got a couple pounds of round sitting in my midsection I need to get rid of come the first of the year.
Yes, sir.
Going to make it happen. There you go, folks. Well, thank you, sir, for joining me on this edition of the show, and let's leave them like we always do until the next time when we talk about the Cotton Bowl, folks, coming up. Be sure to check us out. Probably going to be coming up here in the next couple of days, Chris, because next Friday we got 5 days until the Buckeyes take on the Trojans in the 82nd rendition of the Cotton Bowl, taking place down there in Dallas and Jerry World. Man, I'm looking forward to that one, baby. I can't wait till we talk about that show.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Absolutely. There we go. Let's leave them like we always do, sir. O-H.
I-O.
Go Bucks.